So Pokemon games are expensive. I'm someone who's enjoyed Pokemon games my entire life, and now sometimes as an adult want to go back and try to relive some of those memories. Just maybe not that bad. Not a problem though, I'll just download one of those trusty ROMs. But shh, don't tell the Pokemon Company. So it appears the Pokemon Company wants their consumers to be broke, and I'm not even talking about the new games, because that's understandable. The prices in gaming have been skyrocketing for the past decade, and most console games have reached the $60 to $70 mark, and that's not including DLC. And maybe I just view that as normal now because of the slew of filth that has filled up the Switch shop. Like seriously, what is this? And why does it cost that much? But to be more specific, I'm talking about some of those older gems. Think Pokemon Yellow, Heart Gold, Soul Silver, hell, even Gale of Darkness. Now, do these games have any right to be hundreds of dollars? Absolutely not, but they are. And the little bit I did earlier about Pokemon ROMs wasn't as much of a joke as I'd like it to be. Seeing that recently they did a sweep taking down a lot of free options for older games that aren't even being released anymore, but I'll give my spiel on that at the end of the video with the rest of my thoughts. The point is, your ability to get your hands on these games is limited to say the least. Even Pokemon White 2, a game originally released for $35, is now going for upwards of $200, and let's just say, I'm interested. Because now I'm on the hunt to find the most expensive Pokemon game, and then I'm not gonna buy it because it's over $2,500. Just so you guys have a premise of what I'll be covering, I'll be ranking all the mainline games and popular spin-offs in order of their current day price. And just so there's no confusion, the information I'm using consists of Amazon, GameStop, and eBay sold listings, while avoiding knockoffs because even Walmart for some reason is selling fake game cartridges. As you could probably assume, spin-off titles generally sell for less than mainline games, which is why to start off our list we have Pokemon Rumble. The Rumble series does consist of 5 different titles, all of them being found on handhelds like the 3DS, Wii U, or even iOS. The original Pokemon Rumble was a WiiWare game though, so it's dead. But when the games are averaged out together, you can generally get your hands on a physical copy of Pokemon Rumble for around $20. Following the Rumble series, Pokemon Snap for the N64 released in 1999 and surprised me by actually being tied for last, also selling for around $20. And just to clarify, this does not include the new Pokemon Snap for Switch, that version is ranked separately. Our final spin-off before we hit the first batch of mainline games is Detective Pikachu for the Nintendo 3DS, which was released back in 2016. The game now goes for around $25 on resale, and although I've never sat down to play Detective Pikachu, I feel like this makes sense. Moving on to the first mainline games, we have Gen 7's Sun and Moon from 2016. Now don't get me wrong, I had a feeling these would be coming in last compared to the rest of the main series, but ranking number 48 and 49 out of the 52 titles I did research on just feels a little bit wrong. Moon can be found for around $25 and Sun ranks just barely above at $27. This feels like a good spot to point out that I ranked every game from each generation separately because it's not always just a few dollars different. Generation 6 has its first entry with Pokemon X for the 3DS from 2013, selling for around $37. Honestly, very undeserved to rank this low, but we'll have to wait and see where Y ranks. Next up, we have Pokemon Ranger, and this includes all 3 versions for the DS, which in total leveled out to around $38. This next batch is a combination of Mystery Dungeon games, including Super Mystery Dungeon, Gates to Infinity, Blue Rescue Team, and Rescue Team DX. In total, there are 11 Mystery Dungeon games, 3 of which are Japanese exclusive, but this is what I used as my sample size, and when combined, totaled to around $40. Super Mystery Dungeon placed the lowest with a price of $30, and the newest version, Rescue Team DX for Switch, ranked the highest at $55, with the other games all falling somewhere in between. Pokken Tournament DX released in 2015 for the Nintendo Switch and is next up at $40. As you'll come to see, a lot of the Switch titles, both mainline and spin-offs, ended up falling near this range. For example, both Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, which were released in 2021 on Switch, are both being sold separately for around $42. Let's Go Eevee, also a Switch release, this time back in 2018, just barely beats them out, falling at $43. And it just so happens to be tied with Ultra Moon, selling for the same price. Ultra Sun once more surpasses its other version, although this time only by $1, but it's enough to secure itself a place next to the other half of Gen 6, Pokemon Y, at $44. Let's Go Pikachu falls slightly above those previously mentioned at $46, and both New Pokemon Snap and Legends Arceus round out the Switch spin-offs at $47. Taking a bit of a jump, Generation 4's Diamond and Pearl are here at a respectable $55 and $58. and Omega Ruby from 2014 follows them at 63. In case you haven't already noticed, this is around the point that the resale value of these games surpasses its original price, because Pokemon Omega Ruby originally sold for $45, and it will only get worse from here. The original Pokemon Silver for Game Boy Color, a game released in 1999 for instance, sells for $70, and if that wasn't bad enough, Pokemon Yellow, the game released a year prior, is currently selling for $72. At $75, we have one half of the original Gen 1 games, Pokemon Blue for the Game Boy, and it's actually tied with Pokemon White for the DS, an interesting combo to say the least. These next two might be controversial, so please allow me to explain myself. Sword and Shield on their own are priced at $47 and $46 respectively on resale, which would normally place them at spot 34 and 35 in my rankings. However, looping in the DLCs released in 2019 being priced at $30, both versions of the game instead place at spot 22 and 23. If you want to ignore the DLC in your headcanon, that's fine by me. I just wanted to include them in some way, and seeing as you can't play them as a standalone, I figured I would add them in with the base game. Anyway, Pokemon Black is also priced at $77, and Generation 9 Scarlet with the addition of the DLC just breaks the top 20, being tied with the second half of the original Gen 2 games, Gold, both coming in with a price of $80. Alpha Sapphire, in what I would consider a major upset, had an average price of $82, the highest of any 3DS game. Pokemon Red, thanks to presumably Charizard, was valued $8 over Pokemon Blue, bringing its cost to $83, and Violet, with the DLC included, is the last game on this list under the $100 mark, placing in spot number 16 with a total value of $87. Number 15 finishes off Generation 4 with Pokemon Platinum, the pretty much enhanced version of Diamond and Pearl released in 2008, and is priced at $103, nearly the combined total of its predecessors. Number 14 is the original Ruby game for the Game Boy Advance and sells for $115. Ever so slightly ahead is Pokemon White 2, yet another enhanced version of a previous title, but this time of Generation 5 for $120. Before bouncing back to Generation 3 with Sapphire for $122, but it wouldn't be confusing without number 11 being the other half of Gen 5, Black 2 for $130. Fire Red and Leaf Green both released in 2004 on the Game Boy Advance, but somehow once again Charizard managed to beat out the counterpart game with another $8 difference no less. Leaf Green goes for around $142 and Fire Red at $150. We return to spin-off titles with Pokemon Colosseum on the GameCube, and boy, did they make a jump. $170 is the current day asking price, making Colosseum one of the most expensive spin-off titles. Generation 2's Crystal is next up, and although I had initially thought the re-release of a digital copy made for the 3DS would bring the price down, I guess the Nintendo eShop shutting down on older devices kind of negates its current day availability, because the game is still $175. Passing Crystal at a price of $185 is Soul Silver, dare I say, part of the best set of remakes made so far. And according to my rankings, I might be right feeling that way, because rounding out the last of the remakes is Heart Gold for $215, securing spot number 5. Gale of Darkness, a 2005 release on the GameCube, I feel is a niche game that is secretly renowned in the Pokemon community for its really unique gameplay, and being sold for $240 kind of confirms my thoughts. Number 3 is our final mainline game, and is none other than Gen 3's very own Emerald. I didn't really have in mind a specific game I thought would be considered the most valuable mainline title, but Pokemon Emerald, it makes sense. Maybe not $250 worth of sense, but fair enough to say the least. Number 2 is a weird one, and dare I say, kind of an honorable mention. I'm talking about Pokemon Puzzle Challenge for Game Boy Color, a game released in 2000. Now here's the catch. The game alone, meaning no box, goes for around $35, which would rank it number 47 instead of number 2, but with the case on the other hand, we're looking at $325. Now you're probably wondering, does this mess up my entire list if you don't like the fact that I did it this way? Yes. Number 1 compared to all the previously mentioned titles, however, put them to shame. Pokemon Box Ruby and Sapphire sells in the range of $2,000 to over $3,000. But I will be honest, this is with the case. But how much does it go for loose? Well, you're still looking at around $1,000 for a single disc, and I'd say that's a lot, but it begs the question, what even is Pokemon Box? Well, half of the game, if you want to call it that, acts as Pokemon Bank does for the later generations. It's a way of transferring or storing Pokemon from the Game Boy Advance to the GameCube, more specifically from Ruby and Sapphire. If that doesn't sound appealing enough, you could always select Go to Adventure on the home screen to play Ruby and Sapphire on the TV with the connection of your original game cartridge. Basically, it's nothing special, and I'm sorry if that's disappointing. really the only reason why it is so expensive is from its terrible North American release. The only way to purchase it in the States was to either buy it from the old Pokemon Center store in New York City, or in Europe on the Nintendo website as part of the Coliseum Mega Pack, aka a game that couldn't even directly connect to Pokemon Box. Guys, I'll be honest, I did all this research, hell, I even made an Excel spreadsheet, and I still don't want to believe it. So I think we need to do just maybe one more round of research. Okay guys, I hope you're proud of yourself. I went outside for you. And I'll be honest, I had this huge bit. I was gonna be like, I'm so scared to go in there and record, so I brought this shirt that says, "Don't talk to me, I'll come." And like, this whole thing planned out, okay? But somehow this is funnier. I arrived to GameStop. It's no longer a fucking GameStop. It's a fucking UPS store and whatever the fuck this is. I drove through there was car crashes on the road. I drove like a half hour out of my way to do this after work. And it's a fucking UPS store! Now don't get me wrong, I absolutely love Pokemon games, but by no means do I think someone should be spending their entire paycheck just to own a copy of Pokemon Box. And circling back around to what I was talking about with the ROMs earlier, I understand why the Pokemon Company doesn't want people to just download them for free off the internet, but at the same point, it's not like they're making any money off of it anyway, because the games are no longer in production, and as much as I would love them to make Switch ports of older titles, you know, like they did with the 3DS, I really don't see it happening anytime soon, and it's just disappointing to say the least. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. I had so much fun making it, and I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you guys real soon.